All right, let's call the joint committee meeting to order. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2026, 1:33 p.m. Good afternoon, everyone. Brenda Watson sends her regards. She is on vacation this week and asked that I chair the meeting in her absence. She sends her regards. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Any public comments? Let me give it a moment. And there's John Harity calling me. I'll give it a moment for public comment. All right. As you can see, it was working. John just called. I just forwarded him the meeting invite, so we'll see if he can join us here in a second. Any public comment? All right, let's move forward. We've got the approval of the meeting minutes from the December 17th, 2025 meeting. Does anyone want to move the motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion. It's Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
It's Lonnie. I'll second.
Thank you, Lonnie. Any questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes of December 17th, 2025, say aye.
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 Kathy?
I abstain.
Okay, gotcha. Great. Thank you, Kathy. All right. Motion passes. All right. So let me set some context here. We have Philip and team who have joined us here today, and we are now in our 6th Clean Energy Industry Report. So we are going to have the team from BW Research led by Philip, who's going to walk us through the preliminary findings of the 2025 jobs report. Let me thank also Rudy Sturk on the Green Bank team, who's been coordinating closely with the BW Research team and our external contractor to take all of this textual important findings and putting it into the report that we hope will be ready in the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk a little bit about that deliverable here in a second. But let me turn it over to Philip and take it from here. Just let me know when to move forward, Philip.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here again for the 6th year to release this preliminary information for the Clean Energy Jobs Report. As many of you know, this work is built on the public data sets that are part of the U.S. Energy Employment Report from the Department of Energy. And then what we do here in Connecticut is that we essentially analyze and synthesize the data for relevance in the state. So we're able to provide some good detailed findings on how the Connecticut clean energy landscape looks from a jobs and employment perspective, and luckily have been able to also track it over time so that we can see what changes have been occurring over time. It's very exciting always for us to release these data, because this year, as in prior years, we have a lot of good news to share. We are also pleased to let you know that the U.S. Energy Employment Report is continuing to be produced by DOE, and there's an expectation that that report will be released sometime late summer or early fall with some fresh data for the state. So we'll be able to maintain that continuity. Also, given the audience here today, going to give a shout out to the men and women Huskies. So I'm sure there's some UConn fans here. I am a proud graduate, undergraduate in class of 2000. And I will be at the round of 32. I'm so confident about the game against Furman that I will be at the game in Philly on Sunday. So if you have any questions about the report, I'm happy to answer them, but not on Sunday because I'll be cheering on the Huskies. Why don't we go to the next slide, Brian? So as you mentioned, this is part of the U.S. Energy Employment Report. These were data that were collected last year. So actually at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And so, a lot of changes happening that we are always interested to continue to monitor this year over year. And there were 565 businesses that were full participants in the survey as business establishments with about a 4% margin of error at that 95% confidence interval. So this is a consistent with best practices around survey research. It's a pretty comprehensive assessment. And we use these data from these businesses to understand what is happening in energy employment within the context of Connecticut's overall economy. So we're not remaking any numbers. We're using the existing labor market statistics for the state of Connecticut. And we're understanding of those jobs that exist that are calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the State Department of Labor, what is happening within those jobs and within those businesses that's connected to clean energy. So if we go to the next slide, we can get into some of the exciting news. So we're just about at 47,300 clean energy jobs in Connecticut. This is the most that we've ever had. It's also exciting to see that growth has really rebounded. We saw the drop off from COVID-19, and it took a while for jobs to rebound back to the pre-pandemic levels. But we see here this 2.8% growth. This is much faster than overall statewide employment growth over the period. And in fact, over that year from 2023 to 2024, clean energy jobs actually accounted for 10% of all new jobs in the state. So really pretty remarkable growth finding. If we go to the next slide, we can get into some more details. So once we look at the overall employment, then we break it down into some major categories. And what we see here is that energy efficiency remains the dominant source of jobs, and it really is the primary driver. This is largely due to the fact that there is so much opportunity and so much activity that exists around energy efficiency. And when we talk about energy efficiency in terms of this report, we're really talking about efficiency in buildings. So these would include all of the utility programs that exist, as well as other construction activities that are connected to either Energy Star goods or services that are done to Energy Star standards. There are a few things that sort of fall outside of that, but almost all of this is related to that Energy Star label. And also important to note that clean grid and storage is growing, and that's really, as we'll get into in a little bit, driven by battery storage. So exciting to see some of those findings as well. And then you can see the trend over time that sort of it's always hard when you have a big sector like this. It starts to get kind of small when you look at things like clean fuels, but we do see sort of a steady march from 2020 forward across all of the major categories. We go to the next slide. We'll go into even more detail where we can look at what is the what are the largest segments that we find here. So there's a couple of different ways that we measure what's happening in terms of activity. So one thing we want to look at is, are there more businesses getting into this space? Are there more clean energy businesses? And that can be companies that are new companies that form, or they can be companies that say, I've been servicing and installing oil boilers for the last 20 years, and I'm running out of runway here. I'm not getting the sales I need. I think I better venture into, heat pumps or high efficiency systems. So we are seeing a rapid growth in the total number of companies that are installing energy efficiency measures or working on energy efficiency products. Really, a lot of that growth is coming out of that high efficiency HVAC. So that does include heat pumps, but it also does include Energy Star rated furnaces, air conditioners, and boilers that may use fossil fuels. You may be wondering why there's a category called traditional HVAC. And this is a really interesting metric, because one of the things we want to do is we want to look at firms that are still doing predominantly traditional non-Energy Star related work, but maybe do a little bit of energy efficiency work, right? So it's not a bulk of their work, but maybe they're predominantly putting in traditional, 80 to 85% efficiency furnaces that operate on natural gas, but they're, starting to, or they are doing some high efficiency units. Where we see this most frequently is they might do some, higher SEER central air conditioning units, or maybe some higher efficiency furnaces or boilers. But we track this over time as well to see, is the overall industry growing, and are we seeing growth in more of those traditional firms who are doing at least something connected to an energy efficiency qualifying technology? Yes, Brian.
So question, Philip, I realize this is 2024 data or maybe early 2025 data, and we're talking a lot about Energy Star. How will Energy Star be impacted in the new data that we have?
Yeah. So the label still exists, and employers are still using it. And we did ask this question for DOE because we're going through a revision right now. And according to that process with the Department of Energy, from what we have been told, is that it seems as though Energy Star may, I don't know what the right word is to use, but maybe not under this immediate pressure of elimination that had once been considered, so that it seems as though it's likely that Energy Star label will continue over time. If it goes away, the benefit of Energy Star is we're not asking people to opine on what they think efficiency is or isn't. It's a label where it either qualifies or it doesn't. So there's no value judgment. So it's a hugely important label. I think Energy Star would survive even if the government backed away from it through other initiatives. And if so, my recommendation would be to continue to track with Energy Star because it has meaning, right? It's not one code to the next, or one state's climate policy to the next, or one contractor's belief of what's efficient versus another's that's an actual measure. So we're hoping that it sticks around. We think it's a valuable metric for this kind of work, and it sounds like there aren't major questions there. We do still see quite a lot of activity, and you can see we do have this Energy Star and efficient lighting, so Energy Star appliances and efficient lighting. This is separate from Energy Star heating and cooling, so just want to make sure people understand that difference. So this does include things like if somebody purchases, an Energy Star induction stove that requires work for installation, that would include those types of products, or other installation of other Energy Star measures, as well as efficient lighting. And then advanced materials is starting to accelerate at a pretty rapid pace. So when we start seeing things that exceed 3% growth, we get pretty excited. And so it's 145 jobs that we've seen. John, I see a question from you.
Yeah, just let's say someone purchases an energy efficient stove. What are the jobs that are counted in terms of these statistics?
Yeah. So in the case of Connecticut, it was a little bit different than some of the national numbers. So if we look at it nationally, it's, if there's a manufacturer of the stove or any of the component parts, then that would be included. The distribution, the wholesale trade and distribution is included also. We do also look at innovation. So if there are any startups or academic centers that are focused on research and development, but the primary activity is going to be around the installation of those measures. So there's going to be a lot of Energy Star activity that's happening in the state that is not actually related to any job counting in this report. Because if, for example, I have a electric clothes dryer that is a traditional electric clothes dryer, I drive my pickup truck to the hardware store and I purchase a new Energy Star unit and I bring it back to my house and I plug it in, we don't count retail sales. So we would count the supply chain and network that got it to the ultimate point of sale, but there wouldn't be any additional activity. If I hired an
that's what I
electrician,
had wondered about.
now if I did hire an electrician to come in and say, okay, I had a gas stove, but I want to put induction in and I don't have a 220 line, could you purchase this unit, install that, install the receptacle that I need and make sure that the unit is all fit, and I pay someone to come in and install it, that job would be included.
But how do you know about that job?
Right. So the job is based on the survey of construction firms across the U.S.
Okay.
So basically, so we are surveying electricians. So I will tell you that aspect of this is pretty small, right? So this is part of the reason why Energy Star Appliances included with efficient lighting here is that the actual activity in Connecticut for Energy Star Appliances themselves is quite small.
Well, thank you. That clears up a lot of things. Thank you.
Sure. And I see a question from Kathy.
I guess this is probably along similar lines, but we're here at a meeting of the Green Bank, and every person that works for the Green Bank is in the clean energy sector, but jobs like that aren't being counted anywhere or any way. And similarly, concierge services. I run a concierge service that helps people access all the different resources. Are any of those things being tallied anywhere? I mean, obviously not in this report, but how are they being tallied?
Yeah, so some of those activities are included, and so programs that operate within utilities, some government agencies, and professional business services as well are also being included. So if we go to, and I'm not, I think actually, if we go to the next slide, Brian. Well, let me hit these couple of slides first, then we have one on value chain, and that will answer your question. And if it doesn't, then raise your hand again, and you could tell me if I didn't answer it.
Right.
Sure. So this is the clean energy generation sector employment. Obviously, solar is a major employer here. So there's this interesting dynamic that's occurring, right, where residential solar is, we all know in this call, residential solar is, the smaller the project, the more expensive per kilowatt hour, right, generally. So utility scale solar tends to be a lot cheaper than residential solar. But the flip side of that is that, you get a lot more jobs out of residential solar install because you have a lot more permitting processes. It just takes more time it's less labor efficient, right? So one of the things that we're looking at is that with the expiration of some of the tax credits and depending on how consumers respond with third-party leases and other activities, a big part of the national solar landscape and the solar landscape in Connecticut is this residential solar market. And so we are looking at how the expiration of the residential tax credit is going to impact the solar number. We're obviously, we've seen growth over the years in wind. That's another area that we are keeping our eyes on closely. And, we do track nuclear. Not every state includes nuclear in their clean energy jobs report, but the US DOE does track nuclear jobs. And that is obviously an area of huge importance. You see one category there, which is low impact hydropower. This is also a place where states differ. Some states count all hydroelectricity as part of their RPS or as part of their definition for clean energy. Some states are really want to disaggregate out low impact hydropower. So we do both. So we have both traditional hydropower and low impact, which has to be certified low impact as well. So this slide may also be helpful to answer a little bit of the last question, or at least make, I think, an important point. As you can see, we've calculated over the years, if you look at the margin of error, there's about 90 jobs in geothermal, and this is geothermal electric production. So I'm sure you would say to me, wait a minute, we're not actively producing power out of large scale geothermal wells here in Connecticut. How could there possibly be 90 jobs. This would include things either in the research and development space, right, where there are people who are researching, Connecticut companies who are researching these technologies for application other places, and also professional business services, finance, and other categories where there may be firms that are set up as consulting firms that are doing a lot of work across a number of technologies, and geothermal is one of them, or a primary one. So we do look at a broad scale of the value chain in this report. So if we go to the next slide, you can see alternative transportation employment. We did see a decline in hybrid electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. This is consistent with national declines. Actually, it's a bit less of a decline than in the national numbers. It's also within our margin of error, so that's why we call it sort of relatively stable. A 1.1% change for an industry this size is not a huge number of jobs. So I don't think we want to read into this as too much of a decline. We did see a big jump in electric vehicle registrations. But one of the things why reports like this we think are valuable is that there is a lot of conversation about how electric vehicles may require less maintenance, and therefore there's some questions about, as we transition to electric vehicles, will there be impacts in terms of job reductions for repair and maintenance over time? We haven't really seen those show up too much yet, but it's still quite small and quite early. So it's something that we're tracking, see if we can understand how that will play out. We can go to the next slide. Clean grid and storage. So I mentioned this earlier. Exciting milestone, first time that this category surpassed 1,000 jobs. And really storage is what's adding those jobs at the largest. We do see a lot of other grid technologies that are emerging and that we expect to see grow over the coming years. And so this category overall is one that's really exciting, especially given many of the supply constraints that we have in our region, and how many of these are solutions that are offered that could be deployed now, as opposed to some others that are either held up in sort of legal challenges or have very long supply chain wait times. So if we go to the next slide, we'll hit on gross regional product. This is basically, if you're familiar with GDP, this is just the same thing, it's just for the state. And what this means is if you add up all of the value of the goods and services for the value that gets added in the state of Connecticut, what is the value of this industry to Connecticut's economy? And we calculate that at $7 billion, which is about 2.4% of overall statewide gross regional product. That's pretty substantial. One out of almost every $40 in the state's economy is connected to clean energy. It's a number that is higher than the national average. This is where, when we look at the Connecticut economy, we see a lot of growth in construction, which is really important. But really, we are still seeing a state where professional and business services are contributing the most to the gross regional product. So this includes engineering services, architectural and design services, construction, construction services, meaning the firms that are providing the consulting and support services to those industries, accounting, finance, etc. So these are the sometimes called white collar jobs that exist that Connecticut is known for, and they're really contributing a lot to the gross regional product around clean energy in the state.
So that's the answer to my question,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
And this slide too. So if you see what we've calculated here is the value chain. So construction is the largest and wholesale trade is the fastest growing, but the second largest is this professional and business services. And so while we don't conduct a census, so we don't talk to every business and every category of consulting services and business services, we do talk to thousands across the country, actually tens of thousands across the country and hundreds in Connecticut. And so we are able to identify, what is the propensity of this activity in professional business services. We see, pretty significant growth, adding 400 jobs at 3.6%. Where we are often undercounting in this report is, as you mentioned, in government. Government is very tricky to account for, and for a number of reasons. There are sometimes rules about participating in survey efforts, right, that states don't, even when it's from the Department of Energy, they don't participate. And then also, the threshold question here is for participation in the survey, and therefore for the jobs to be included is, is your firm in the business of doing any of these things? And government is a tricky question. So it's something that we've sort of consistently had challenges with. But professional business services, I think we get a pretty good beat on. Also nice to see some strong growth in manufacturing. Again, there were some substantial sort of tax incentives around localizing manufacturing at the federal level. We'll continue to watch that to see if any of the changes in those incentives have any ripple effects.
This is Melissa. I'm wondering, how do you differentiate professionals that are engaged in clean energy services versus not? And it's same for construction, because I imagine, being somebody who is an architect, that everyone would answer yes. I'm not sure.
Yep. So they don't all answer yes, but that's right. So basically what happens is the basic design of the survey is that an employer is first asked a threshold question about whether their company does anything related to clean energy or energy. Then the definitions are provided, and then they're asked to provide what category or what qualifying activity they have. So if it's an architect, they might say, okay, we design energy efficient buildings. We then ask them to verify their employment total at their location. And then we ask them, what portion of that number, right? So if you have 100 employees, of those 100 employees, how many are doing anything at any part of their time are they spending on one of these qualifying activities? And then they would say, maybe 75 out of the 100 have that in their portfolio. And then we say, okay, of those 75, how many would spend a majority of their time doing these activities? And they might say 50 spend a majority of their time. And then we say, okay, of those 50, how many spend all of their time? And then you find out who is purely dedicated to that role. From there, we're able to determine, there are different reasons for why we ask each of those. I know this is really getting into the weeds here, but sometimes the question is, what do you need, like from a workforce development perspective, what do we need to know? What do we need to do? And so if the market is emerging that essentially you need 5 people spending 20% of their time doing this because that's what the market bears, then to the workforce community, you need to train 5 people, not 1 FTE, right? But at the same time, you may wonder, well, what does this impact to our overall economy, right? And I'd really rather know, like, what if we created hypothetical people who spent all their time doing this, what would the impact be to our economy? So we can calculate those as well. So we do that generally in that gross state product slide that I referred to earlier, where what we're using there is like an intensity metric, right? How much of the time? And for certain categories, we are disaggregating out that majority time, like in energy efficiency, for example, and in that HVAC example, we're disaggregating out, these are the firms that are doing traditional HVAC and do a little bit of energy efficiency. These are the ones that are doing most of their time in energy efficiency. So we try to provide different levels of information and then generate this sort of intensity metric that allows us to see not just how many, for want of a better term, like what's the seat count of total number of humans that are touching this, but also what's the intensity of that work. And just as a brief example of that in 2 different states, we found that at the baseline metric of just like number of people who spend any portion of their time doing energy efficiency work, we found a rough approximation of about the same amount of work. This was about 5 years ago now, in Virginia and Massachusetts. And we were sort of surprised that, and then we ran the intensity number and we saw that the Massachusetts workers were about 4 times more intensely working in energy efficiency. So we do have both of those numbers. They just serve different purposes. So when we present the information, and this is how it's presented in the report, we try to sort of say, there's different reasons why you would report things at different metrics without confusing everyone, which hopefully I haven't just done. But there are different reasons for why you would report jobs at a seat count level versus a full-time equivalent level. So that's sort of the basics of how we do it. And in construction, that is exactly right? Some construction firms are in heavy construction, road paving or whatever, and they say, no, we don't do anything. And others are electrical contractors that say, sure, we do, we wire whips for heat pumps with, we have 2 people who do that, and they do it once a week, right? And then we sort of know how to classify them into, depending on what the reporting metric needs to be.
Great. I'm wondering if all the data, that kind of drill down data, is available.
I think, yeah. So I think there's a lot of data in the report that's not in the preliminary slides, so I think that probably would be what you need. But if not, I think if you reached out to Brian, he can, or Rudy, then they can coordinate with us, and we can see what we can get for you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Sure. All right. So I think we can go to the next slide. So I think I've probably gone over your time here, Brian, but I'll get to, we only got a couple of slides left. So this isn't terribly surprising to me, right, given the population in Connecticut. But I do think that looking at some of the percentage gains, it is really, really helpful. We do see the bulk of the employment in the largest population centers, Hartford, Fairfield, New Haven, and in those 3 counties. And then the next up will be New London County. New London County was growing fast in terms of its overall growth. Part of that is, we obviously know there's some activity down there in 2023, 2024, supporting offshore wind. And when you're starting from a relatively smaller base, those jobs can really add up in terms of that percentage growth. We do have more details also of county level employment included in the appendices of the report. So if you have questions about that when the report is released, they may be answered there. And if not, we're happy to dig in. So demographics are really important to track as well. There are different ways to track these. We follow the Census Bureau and their guidance on tracking demographics, because this, as I said, is a report that's done for DOE. I don't know that there's anything particularly surprising in here, other than but a couple that I'll note anyway. Women are still underrepresented. This is largely driven by the underrepresentation of women in the construction sector and the propensity of construction in clean energy. So it's pretty consistent with overall clean energy employment nationwide, and we've looked at this a number of times, and it is the largest factor for this is underrepresentation of women in construction jobs. We find that for ethnic and racial minorities and mixed race workers at the same percentage as the statewide overall workforce average, so quite representative there. And a significant overrepresentation of veterans. There are a number of programs that we've identified in Connecticut that work with veterans. There's a number of clean energy specific programs nationally that work with veterans. And so with an overall workforce 3% representation, 9% is significant. So lots of veterans working in the industry, and also good news for the employers in this sector, a significantly lower older worker population. So certainly in some sectors that is higher, and I'm sure some of you are acutely aware of it, being from where you're from. But the only about 13% of the workers in clean energy in Connecticut are reported to be 55 or older, compared to 28% of the workforce overall, which is pretty high. Okay, we can just talk quickly about the traditional energy employment. So the U.S. Energy Employment Report tracks jobs across all energy sectors. A couple of years ago, Brian and team thought, well, if we're looking at all these data, we should look at what do we count as our sort of clean energy definition, and then what about everything else that gets counted. So the U.S. Energy Employment Report counts all motor vehicles. So that's the entire supply chain other than retail sales of motor vehicles. So that's what you see there all the way to the right. There's also a lot of transmission, distribution, and storage that is not purely sort of like the smart grid and clean storage activities. So things like LNG storage, traditional grid hardening, even if it's resiliency work, gets counted in this category. Fuels, obviously, we're talking about fossil fuels here. And then electric power generation would be for the fossil plants that exist, or their support services, or companies that are servicing them in other states. So that's what we have here for traditional employment. You obviously see the motor vehicle number is really big. TDS is one that is challenging. There's lots of different ways to think about it. It's very, very hard to disaggregate that category out if it's not something very specifically connected to your definition. So there are certainly jobs in that transmission, distribution, and storage category that are supporting clean energy technologies. It's just sort of impossible to pull that out. And yes, this is the same year data. So it's the end of 2024 report, end of 2023, basically. All right. Okay. Traditional energy. So we're going to go through these again. We're just going with traditional. So obviously natural gas is the largest. There is still some coal, electricity. Again, there's a wide range of value chain companies that are working here that we can see. Predominantly what we're talking about here is natural gas. Though we did see significant growth in natural gas, around natural gas electricity hiring. So 6.5%, 80 jobs. Coal and oil continue to decline. Next slide is it. That's right. That's all we did. We have some appendix slides as well, but I think we thought this would, I think I went over by a bit anyway. So I'll just recognize Sophia and Andrea from my team who are also here to answer any questions that you have. And we're just, like I said, we're excited for this report to release. And when the report comes out, if you have additional questions, please funnel them through the chair or through the Green Bank, and we'll be happy to respond as soon as we can get your answer.
Excellent.
So Brian, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. So we would invite any additional questions or comments. I'm going to try to communicate out comments that Chair Watson had in terms of her observations and requests for consideration in future years. So just three broad points. The report to policy. So connecting the report with Connecticut policy by sharing examples of how it's being used effectively. So what kind of comes to mind there? I'm just thinking big picture. Philip, as you were talking earlier, when we had our first meeting 6 years ago, we really dug into the different classifications underneath the DOE user report. And we're like, okay, in the Connecticut policy context at that time, what should we be counting? Because it's a Connecticut clean energy industry report, right? So what really stood out to me, Philip, was when we were in the clean energy sector and you talked about hydro. We may have a different view of hydro today than we did back then because we're procuring larger scale hydro. So one of the things we may want to do looking ahead is to get the teams together again like we did back then and say, should we reset or take a look at what we're counting today and what we should be counting going ahead? So that's one. And then I think Brenda is trying to draw a correlation between some of those jobs and the policies that were established in terms of those historical job numbers. So we'll just flag that, Philip, as a potential follow-up to you and team, and see if we might not include that as an additional option in future studies. So we'll just flag that. And then the second one, systems impacted section. I think what Brenda's getting at here, so including within this section, demographic sections underneath white, add returning citizens or formerly incarcerated to inform, that we're ensuring clean energy job readiness. So I think she's asking for an additional kind of classification. There may be standards on your end in terms of the veterans and all the things that have been identified. So we may have to think a little bit about this one, right? So again, let's look at some optional ways of looking at that. And then Brenda was like, and we're getting close to our 10th anniversary on this report, right? So let's just think about, a couple years down the road, how we might not include additional things in that report, because we can really redefine this report in terms of its overall impact on communicating clean energy jobs to stakeholders in Connecticut. For example, all the federal policy changes that have happened over time, maybe there's something there where we can see jobs being affected, plus or minus. Workforce equity tracking, regional municipal breakdowns, as you just went through, and then the wage and quality of jobs analysis, which I thought was kind of an interesting point, because I think we looked at that in the past, but we haven't been looking at it recently. So these are some things that Brenda's flagged for us. And I think working with Rudy on our end and our partners with the EDCs, we'll come back to you, or we'll ask you all to come up with some potential scopes of work for that.
That sounds great. So some of these are I think, of course, all are feasible depending on how deep you want to go. We thought that maybe we could take a crack at some of the feasibility in terms of what's an easy lift, what's a bigger lift. DOE is releasing a wage and job quality analysis this year as part of the USER. So I do think that's sort of on the easier lift and high value. So that's really exciting. Some of the other ones, as you said, are a little bit more challenging, but would love to talk with you about how to incorporate all those things into future reports.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions, comments from others? All right. Cool. BW research team, thank you. Thank you. That was great. As usual, good luck as we navigate the user reports, and we'll do some follow-ups with you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to proceed with the agenda. So let me give an update on the comprehensive plan for this current fiscal year and how we're thinking about subsequent fiscal years. So just at a macro level, the Green Bank staff working with the board and its committees, the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee in May, which John Harrity on the call here chairs, works to set the budget and targets. They recommend those budget and targets to the board in June. We then set those targets, and for the most part, the targets are, number of projects, level of investment, megawatts of deployment, and ensuring that we're deploying no less than 40% of investment and benefits in vulnerable communities, which is statutorily defined as environmental justice communities, low to moderate income communities, less than 80% area median income census tracts, and others definitions are weighed in there, Community Reinvestment Act communities and the like. So we track progress to those targets. We're doing fairly well through the fiscal year to date. In general, there's a lot of things happening at the federal level with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, phasing out investment tax credits on some areas of clean energy while extending them in other areas like storage and fuel cells, but ending them in areas like solar. So we saw a lot of demand at the end of the year on projects. So we're pretty good in terms of hitting or looking to hit our targets by the end of the year across our different programs. And in terms of vulnerable communities, we're in a pretty good spot there as well. So this is kind of just our sharing our internal tracker to our comprehensive plan. We are in the process of looking at our next comprehensive plan. So we're going through an internal staff and board conversation around what's important, what are areas where we can double down to support public policy implementation, and what are areas that are important to open up. So let me give you a few examples of those areas. Section 2 of Public Act 2148 deals with the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program in helping multifamily affordable housing and tenants residing within there benefit from on-site residential solar. I would probably say that's a doubling down effort. Mackie's going to talk about the progress on that here. And that's just to say that it's super, super important that these families benefit from the deployment of clean energy, not only from the greenhouse gas perspective, but more importantly, from an economics energy savings perspective, and tying in storage to that as well. On the middle side here, this is probably more an opening up a market here, which is in support of Connecticut's Clean Air Act, supporting school districts to deploy zero emission school buses. There are several targets in statute. I think it's 100% environmental justice communities by 2030 and all communities by 2040. There are some 7,000 to 8,000 buses that transport our children to and from school every day. So you could imagine at $350,000 a bus, not including the associated recharging infrastructure, that this is billions of dollars of investment, and we're navigating the role of the federal and state incentives in combination with financing, how to deploy those vehicles. And more recently, we've been celebrating with Chair Reed's town of Brantford, who is moving towards 100% zero emission school buses, way ahead of target. And then lastly is opening up a new area along the lines of resilience. We've got a number of statutes there. 2153 is our energy storage solutions program. So really digging into, grid outages and putting storage on our families and businesses, homes and buildings when the grid goes down, but it also plays a role of reducing peak demand. We've got Public Act 21115, which expanded our scope beyond clean energy to include environmental infrastructure. That includes climate adaptation and resilience. Public Act 22-6 is our CPACE expansion that not only included EV recharging stations in our CPACE program, but also resilience projects. And then, of course, last session, working with the governor's office on resilience improvement districts through Public Act 25-33, looking at the role of public financing using tax increment financing as a way for municipalities to fund resilience projects. So we're trying to figure this space out. Super important that we increase our investment in resilience projects. And then lastly, I think was just a general report out here on reporting. We, on the right-hand side, we file with the committees of cognizance, which are the Banking Committee, Commerce Committee, E&T Committee, and Environment Committees, the fiscal year report of the Green Bank, which is the colorful, snappy one that is a component of our annual comprehensive financial report, which is on the left-hand side, which is both our financial statistics, our financial position, how we use resources to achieve social and environmental impact, and then non-financial statistics, which is all the impact that results from investment and deployment of clean energy and environmental infrastructure. It's a super long report, super fun, great methodologies, lots of stuff in there. So just showing you links to those reports. So that's kind of where we are on the process for our comp plan and planning. Happy to take questions. Please, John. Please, John.
Yeah, Brian, I was just going to suggest that in addition to the committees you named, that the report be sent to the Labor Committee as well, because jobs are included in there, and to the extent that they deal with the issue of employment they should know about energy as a sector.
Mhm. That's great. All right. All right. Well, let's keep going. The update on the 2026 CNLM plan. We'll turn it to you, Steve.
Hi, thanks, Steve Bruno, Eversource. I'll do a couple slides, and then Marissa Westbrook from Avangrid will do some as well. Just a couple quick slides, just update. We just refiled, the companies refiled the 2026 plan update. We basically address any extra revenues or spending carry over, carry under, refile the plan, tweak the programs a bit, and highlight the main change on the residential side. We reintroduced the appliance recycling initiative we had years ago due to new vendor availability. So that program is back in place, and it's received positively by customers, and actually in all 3 states that we work in as well. Avangrid discontinued the residential behavior program. And then the big change on the residential side this year in the 2026 plan was that we implemented new program models for the HES and HESI programs, incorporating 2 visit models. And then the companies are also working with stakeholder review as well on redesigning the customer reports after they get an audit, which provides recommended measures to move forward with to save additional energy for their homes. And then the CNI side, we talked about this in prior meetings, but we're moving forward, or we're pending deep approval, I guess. We're moving forward with the decarbonization studies on the CNI side to address not only CNLM energy efficiency measures, but also more coordinated to look at opportunities for solar, battery storage, EV chargers as well, to kind of combine some of the energy efficiency measures with the DEEP programs with some of the PURA grid mod initiatives. Next slide. In terms of overall spending over the 3-year plan, the columns on the left focus on the electric budgets, natural gas budgets, combined budgets for the 3 years. So about $750 million in combined spending over the 3 years. And over on the right side, in terms of the third column to the right, that basically takes the energy savings, energy and energy benefits, brings it forward and categorizes it into a dollar benefit, and it's $2.7 billion, which roughly is for every dollar you invest, you get $3.20 in lifetime benefits. And then I'll move on to Marissa.
Great, thanks. Marissa Westbrook from Avangrid. Just wanted to make a few quick highlights of our 2025 annual legislative report, also called the Programs and Operations Report of the Board. That was delivered to the legislature on the 27th of February electronically, and then in hard copy the following week. And a few key highlights. It's a great document. There is a link here to the document if you'd like to, if you haven't already seen it and would like to go through it. It's got some great case studies and really highlights the value and the benefits that the programs deliver throughout the state. And so just a few areas to highlight here. In terms of energy savings, over 1 million annual MMBTUs reduced, which equates to annual energy savings in dollars of over 36 million, and lifetime over 410 million. And then we delivered, this was made up of over 589,000 projects and rebates statewide. So some really significant achievements across the residential, commercial sectors and community and education sectors as well. We certainly appreciate all the collaboration as well with the Green Bank in the support of these programs. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Steve. Questions, comments? All right, let's keep going. We are on agenda item number 6, and I see Mackie there. So Mackie, I'm going to turn it over to you on healthy housing.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll give a quick update on our Solar Map Plus program for affordable multifamily. Folks might remember this is our program that helps with helps properties install all the way from, it's essentially technical assistance for doing solar and storage projects at affordable multifamily properties. The projects that are of interest to this group are the master metered properties, where we can take the tenant portion of the solar project, the tenant revenue that is generated by the solar project, and use it to fund improvements to the property, including energy efficiency improvements. There's not a lot of news on our first two portfolios, which I've presented on for the last two meetings, so I won't go into to repeat myself again, other than to say that all these projects are now under contract, and development work has begun with the contractors. We've got interconnection and RS applications in to the utilities on many of them, and are working through those now. We did about a month ago put out an RFP for our third portfolio of projects, which includes, in addition to affordable multifamily, some municipal and school projects. But of the affordable multifamily projects, we have one that's master metered. It's a just over 300 kilowatt project at Parish Court in Fairfield. We're still working with them, though, to identify which or what the tenant improvement will be. So unless there's any questions, that is my update for now. I guess I'll say I would hope, see, we're in, it's March now. I would hope to get some of these under construction in the summer. And at that point, once the solar project is very firm, and we have an exact amount of what the funding that can go to the tenant improvement, then we would start to contract for those tenant improvements and actually start to make progress on getting those installed. So nothing's changing on the slides, but a lot of work going on underneath these to move them forward, and should start to see actual construction happening this year.
Excellent. Thank you, Mackie. Questions, comments? Please, John.
Yeah, on the list of annual savings per tenant, the Unionville, how does it get to be $1.1 million?
Yeah, so that's the difference between tenant metered and master metered. So in the case of tenant metered properties, the tenants get a credit on their utility bill, which the smaller numbers reflect what that expected annual amount of credits would be. For master metered properties, we don't, there's one meter. The tenants don't each have one, so we have no way of getting them the money directly through those credits. So instead, the tenant portion of the project is used to fund an improvement to the property. So in that case, you see the second part of the column heading, the upgrade amount, where so the projects that are highlighted are the master metered property. So that's how much funding will go into a tenant improvement. For example, for New Horizon Village, that 1.2 million, that's the one in Unionville, that's being used for primarily kitchen renovations, and for that case, it's primarily energy efficient appliances.
Okay, so it's just slightly different measures, or the ability to measure.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
I see Marissa has her hand raised.
Yes, hi, Mackie, thanks. Just a quick question on also the timing. I know you mentioned when you would be reaching out to the EDCs on contracting the energy efficiency part, but I'm just trying to like picture this in my head. It would the funding, I guess the credits wouldn't have started flowing by that point from a solar standpoint. It's the contracting of the solar and then aligning that with the contracting of the energy efficiency, but not necessarily the flow of the solar credits, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. We estimate when we start the project based on the size and the estimated production, how much the tenant portion will be. And so that's over to your point, like that's what that represents is solar production over 20 years. You have to take the net present value of that tenant portion and bring it, and whatever that number is, that's what has to be spent now on the tenant improvement. So for the projects that we do, the Green Bank funds those improvements. So the credits wouldn't start flowing to us in exchange for funding that until sometime much later. Next year, we'll start construction this year, including those efficiency installations, but we won't start getting repaid until probably next year when that solar actually starts producing. And then then there's like a 3 to 6 month lag period between the solar producing and the money flowing to us.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay, let's continue forward on to agenda item number 7. I see Brian. There you go. Please.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously right now we're in the middle of the 2026 short session. This really is a session about affordability. 2025, I would argue that energy was kind of clearly in the forefront of most legislators' minds as an area that need to get addressed. And I would say it's still there, obviously, in 2026, but it's really expanded to many other areas where affordability is kind of a key concern for constituents across the state of Connecticut. Right now, where we are in the legislative session, we're kind of in the midst of this kind of public hearing process, and that's kind of coming to an end. They have what are called like joint favorable deadlines. The last one will be coming up on April 2nd, and the House will be back in session on March 25th. One key kind of piece of legislation that the Green Bank is following is this House Bill 5340. This is, and I will say, Pure did run a pretty comprehensive stakeholder feedback process for this. RES, for example, where the Green Bank is kind of focused is, for RES, we really need to find a way to incentivize the solar with the storage. I think that will be better for all ratepayers in the grid. So we have a unique focus there. NRES, interconnection still kind of front of mind for an area that I think will be looking for improvements. And then for the SCEF program. So, right now subscribers, we're looking to potentially have subscribers have to participate in the HES program, which I think really kind of fits into all the joint work that we're doing here at the EEB. And also we'd love to see fuel cells potentially be included within that. That could really bring down the cost for ratepayers. So that's probably the main legislative item that we're following. There's obviously many other kind of bills floating around there. So with that, I'll see if there's any kind of questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we're coming down the wire here. We're going to switch gears and have our teams do updates across our sectors. So we've got Mackie, Steve, Marissa, Amy. Let's start off with the CNI and government sector, and then we'll work into small and medium and large business. I'll just leave it here, Steve and Mackie. You guys can dig in.
Mackie, you want to go? I'll help out.
Yeah, will you go to the next slide, Brian? Yeah, there we go. So I think folks will recall we've got the Green Bank has a partnership with Eversource and Amalgamated Bank to provide capital for the Small Business Energy Advantage program. We are working on our second, this would be our first of the year, second of our, or third of our fiscal year, but first of the calendar year. We're working on that now. Be a total of $5.5 million, 127 loans for $5.5 million that Amalgamated and the Green Bank would purchase from Eversource. And again, this is to provide capital for on-bill 0% loans to businesses, small businesses, municipalities, and the state of Connecticut. Anything to add, Steve?
No, it's perfect. Like I say, this program is still going super well. Happy with it.
Yep, and the Green Bank is quarterly issuing Green Liberty notes, which allows retail investors to provide the capital for us for these purchases. So it allows residents of Connecticut and around the country to invest in these small business energy efficiency projects.
Excellent. And just a follow-up note on that point, Mackie, where the Green Bank is going to its board tomorrow to expand its partnership with Honeycomb Credit on those Green Liberty notes to include project-specific raises. So stay tuned for things like electric school buses in a community where citizens can invest in the loans that are provided to support those projects. So we're looking to complement Sustainable CT with the Community Match Fund with an investment option to support projects. So super excited by that. Okay, let's go to the single family and multifamily update.
And Brian, is Barbara on by any chance, or someone? Otherwise, I can cover this.
Oh yeah, Smarty actually, Steve now belongs to me. So.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
But you can go on and do it.
All right, I'll do the first slide, and if Marissa or Amy want to do the second slide, sounds good. So yeah, we're happy about this one. The smart, as the energized heating loan was basically sunsetted in 2024. The companies, along with Green Bank, have put more emphasis into the Smarty loan offering as a place for customers to get financing for energy efficiency measures, in particular HVAC measures such as heat pumps. We pulled this from our dashboard that we get the data from your firm. 2025 funded loans, 18.5 million, 787 loans, the average loan of $24,000. And then towards the end of the year, starting in September, the companies provided interest rate subsidies to lower the rate down for provided customers, get heat pumps that get rebates from Energy Efficiency Fund to help promote the heat pump program. Now that the Energize CT loan went away, which had like a 0.99% rate. So just in terms of like a little bit of a history, we first went from 6.99, lowered it to 4.99, and then for low income 4.9 to 2.99. Didn't really get much traction. And then, with guidance from the Green Bank team in Q4, we lowered it to 0.99% until March of this year. And then we saw that traction build up. So that was about 800,000 in loans, and then about $25,000 per loan on average. And then, so in terms of a promotional item for the full pilot, the companies had allocated roughly about $1 million that were on target for that pilot offering. And so we're excited about this, and we're trying to manage with the Green Bank the cost, because we know the interest rate buy downs are expensive. And so that we're working on a way to maximize different terms. And I think the next slide kind of covers that. I don't know if Marissa or Amy, you want to grab the next slide.
Sure, I can jump in here. So I know that we are in the process of working through an MOU process between the companies and the Green Bank, and the current promotional period was originally through March. I believe there's been conversation about extending that through June, but with the potential with the MOU to extend through year end. And looking at the different cost impacts of the various buy downs. So at the 9.99, having the max at 25,000 for 5 or 7 years, and at the 2.99, 30,000 max for 10 years. And so with that, we're expecting project pipelines of approximately 275,000 loans. And that is estimated to split out between the companies around 220 for Eversource and 55 for UI.
And then just a note, so we're kind of following what's happening in Massachusetts as well. They originally had the mass heat loan, which had a loan amount of $50,000, and then they were doing 0%. So that's very expensive. So they had changed their program a couple of years ago, and then so they have a $25,000 max and a 7-year loan term. So this kind of is consistent with that, with the $25,000 max, and the 0.99 a little bit higher than that. But we're thinking that'll help us manage costs, but still have an offer that will be happy with customers as the Energize CT loan went away. And so anyway, we're excited about it, and we like these kind of pilots with the Green Bank to see if this helps traction on customers investing in heat pumps and energy efficiency. Thanks.
Great questions, comments? Please, Stacy.
Is there any consideration to offer this loan beyond just HVAC measures, so including other weatherization efforts at all?
We can. We're just trying to watch the money. The original driver, Stacy, was we had, as you know, last year was a little bit slower than the year before in heat pumps. So we're trying to push heat pumps first. But what you're saying, that makes 100%. We just want to watch the volume. Agreed.
No, that makes sense. I'm just wondering for like comprehensive projects,
Yeah,
if we want to have
makes
some
sense. Yeah.
consideration there with these
Yeah.
interest rates.
We'll bring it to the team. Perfect.
Excellent. All right, gang, thank you. Thank you for those updates. So we are coming down the wire here. Let me see if there are any public comments. Okay, hearing none. Let me see if there's a motion to adjourn from the members of the joint committee. John,
So
raise
moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I second Lonnie.
Thank you, Lonnie. All in favor, say aye.
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 This is a great report. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for all of that. And
Yeah.
thank you again to the BW research team. This has been a great collaboration of the joint committee, our EDC colleagues, on this. And just know that the team is going to take all this information, put it into a usable report, get it out. I think we're looking in early April, early to mid-April, and we'll probably, if Rudy's still there, do a webinar on it. But yeah, it's just great,
Yeah.
great results. Keep up the great work,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks. See ya.
Everyone
Thank
have
you.
a good rest of the week.
Thank you.